AFC South, we have the Houston Texans with an A plus. Yeah, lots of A pluses. I think a lot of teams had good off seasons. Dobbs, why did we give them an A plus?
I think the Texans actually might be the one team who really, if I actually dare say, I think that they're the ones who ripped the A plus away the most, trying to think of the right word, just most commandingly, right? Like they really demanded an A plus from this year from the offseason. Because just to put it in simplest terms, the expectations we had for them last year, and then how much that they overachieved on those expectations. But they sat there and they said, that's still not good enough. You know what? Fuck that. We want to go all the way. We're going all in right now. You have to respect it. As a Saints fan, I certainly respect the approach. I've seen the team do it, and it should have left to a Lombardi. We're not going to get into that. Going all in. Look, I'm all for going all in all the time if you have the opportunity, and the Texans are in the most prime situation to do it. You add Joe Mixon, Stephon Diggs. There's so many guys with Danielle Hunter, Aziz Al-Shire, and then also, who am I forgetting here? Another critical guy. I can't forget. Um,
I'm trying to look.
why am I not why can't I remember who it was? Give me a second.
Derek Barnett. I mean that helps, but I don't know if that's the guy you're thinking of.
I see. No, that's it'll come to me in a sec. But also, I think. Well, here, how about this
Oh,
too?
Danico Autry.
Kalen Bullock. Well, yeah, so Danico Autry. Yeah, that's it. You're definitely you're filling out the D line, and then also Kalen Bullock. I think to me is the guy where again I don't know exactly where he's going to round out on this team, but I'm higher on Jalen Bullock than a lot of or than on Kalen Bullock than a lot of people were. I think he's going to find a really nice role in this defense. I mean, to me personally, the Texans went and really, really much like the Lions, they kind of put that crowbar in the window and really jammed open that Super Bowl window. And they said, you know what? We're a real threat the next 3 or 4 years. I don't know. Again, I can't speak past that with how much things change in the NFL. But for the next 2, 3, 4 years, the Texans are going to be right there with anybody. And they made it real loud and clear.
Well, they definitely are taking swings at corner. They signed 6 and then drafted 1 as well. I really like Kamari Lassiter to the Texans. I think it is a really good fit for them. Like I said, like it has been the theme for a couple teams, I think the cornerback position is something to be kind of concerned about. It's just not super great. But overall, I mean, we've seen how much D'Amico Ryans has been able to elevate this team. And now this is what's going to be interesting. Do you think with a year of tape on CJ Stroud that he takes a step back, or do you think he kind of breaks the mold and goes forward? Because I have the same concern with Jordan Love.
See, I think no, I think both of them are going to be guys that break the mold because they're just so good in the most traditional sense where they both live in that pocket. They are just very, very like cerebral. They're not trying to do too much. They're just trying to get the ball where it needs to be. And I think you could say for both of them, granted, the Packers is in a different way, where the Packers is just more the rapport that they're going to have and the chemistry they'll have will be so much better than last year. But with the Texans, you can just outright say, I mean, they made a fat upgrade on offense where you had Stephon Diggs. If you can get Diggs to come and leave the bullshit at the fucking door, I mean, the reality is, dude, this team can actually be very special. It really, how about that? Jokes aside, the biggest key factor of this team's success this year is if Stephon can leave that ego at the door, and I really hope that he does.
I mean, if you pair Stephon Diggs with Nico Collins, who continues to ball out, and then if Tank Dell takes a step and he recovers 100%, like one of the best receiving cores in the NFL. I like their backfield. And something we didn't really talk about, the Blake Fisher pick, like that's really good interior or tackle depth. He can definitely be their swing tackle.
Oh, and he could look. He could take Titus Howard's spot, sure thing. And on top of that, even this in this cycle at camp, and I just want to remind all the Texans fans that told me there's no way the Texans are going to invest in the O line. There's no way. Good teams always invest in their O line. Texans fans, I know it's been a while since you guys have been good, but now that you guys are good again, it's time to get used to it. Good teams are going to always invest in that O line. Make no mistake.
All right, moving into the AFC. Well, we're already in the AFC South. Moving into the Indianapolis Colts. We have them with an A minus. So, you know, I like what they did in the draft, obviously more than their off season or their free agency moves. They're one of those teams that doesn't really do much. They kind of just re-sign their own guys. But getting Latu, Adonai Mitchell, and Tanner Bortolini, all three of them, and even Jalen Simpson, like they put aside the narrative that was out on Adonai Mitchell and said, let's go get a first round caliber receiver to pair up with our young quarterback who already has two really good players in Michael Pittman and Josh Downs. I think they set up Anthony Richardson for a ton of success this year.
Yeah, no. Well, I think the bottom line is, and look, as Anthony Richardson truthers, we got to hope that he shows out for us, because really much like with Caleb Williams, the Colts have really given him no excuses. I mean, you really, again, for the time that they had and the amount of resources they had, they really did the perfect job. And I really can't overstate it with the capital that they had. They put a really good line with the capital they had in a really good receiving core with the capital they had around A. Richie. So if A. Richie can't make it work with JT coming back, hopefully a lot healthier, this really good O-line that they have with young guys even being added in, Goncalves, like if he can't make it work with this defense, who should be able to play above average this year with the addition of Latu, I mean, the bottom line is this. We're going to find out a lot about Anthony Richardson this year. And if Anthony Richardson's not the guy, you're going to have to move on quick, because the window for this team is very open if you have the guy at quarterback, because this roster is actually to the point now where the Colts are a very underrated roster. I think we can both agree on.
I think also the other thing is, like, people underestimate what they did last year with Gardner Minshew. Shane Steichen is the real deal. And let me ask you this, because I don't think people were necessarily fans. I don't understand why people don't like Michael Pittman. It's because he's not like a flashy player. Like, I don't understand it. Like, realistically, for $23 million a year, would you rather have Michael Pittman or would you rather have Calvin Ridley? Because I'm taking Michael Pittman every day.
So here's what I'll say. If there are people, because what's crazy is I didn't even know this was like some narrative. Is this actually like an NFL Twitter narrative right now?
When I was listening to a lot of talk on just like podcasts or like NFL podcasts, just from like analysis from like CBS, like stuff like that, it was a lot of like, yeah, well, do you want to give Pittman wide receiver one money? I'm like, but he's been the wide receiver one for them. Like what was he catching? Like eight catches a game last year.
No,
it was
I was gonna say
ridiculous.
Anybody who is willing to say that was clearly not watching the Colts on all 22. Michael Pittman is that guy who's not only going to find the soft spot, he has the soft hands where he's going to make the catch. He will go up and make the catch at the catch point in aggressive coverage. Oh, and on top of that, he had 109 catches, rounding up 11 yards a target last year. Yeah, he's not the most productive guy in the red zone, but we remember another legend himself that was never very productive in the red zone, in Julio Jones. Let me be clear. Is Michael Pittman Julio Jones? Fuck no, that's not what I'm saying. But the bottom line is you can be an incredibly productive number one receiver in the league and not be your guy's go-to or your team's go-to guy in the red zone. That's perfectly fine. If you're a touchdown stat watcher, just let us know now, because that doesn't translate to the other 99 yards across the field. You know what I mean? The reality is just because you're not catching balls in the end zone is not the end-all, be-all. And it's also because usually you're the guy that gets double teamed in the red zone, which is more than anything a testament to how much defenses respect you. So no, side tangent. But anybody willing to disrespect Michael Pittman, you got to come see me now. I'm Michael Pittman's defender at this point. You got to come see me and let me know.
Now, before we move into the Jacksonville Jaguars, I just want you guys to think about what Anthony Richardson's arm will look like with Adonai Mitchell's 4.33 speed and 6'4" frame. Moving in to the Jacksonville Jaguars, we have them at a B minus. Dobbs. This is just one of those teams where it's like, I don't know how to grade them. I like Brian Thomas Jr. I like Jerry Jones, but I don't know if I like anything else about the draft class. Like, it's the classic bulky draft class. Like, he's going to take traits over on-tape production every single time. And when you look
Yeah,
at
he is.
when you look at the wide receiver room, it's Brian Thomas Jr., Christian Kirk, Gabe Davis. Like, it doesn't move me. Nothing moves me. Like, they should be better this year. I will say this. They should be better, but how much better? And how much better are you making yourselves for the future?
I'm number one. I harp on it. I'm sorry. I'm a harper on this one. Gabe Davis is robbing the bank legally this season. Number one, like legalized bank robbery. He's competing with Floyd Mayweather. You know, Floyd always said he was the GOAT at legalized bank robbery. I don't know. Gabe Davis is rivaling him at this point. Look, jokes aside, with my Gabe Davis fantasy dynasty beef, all the if you know the lore, you know the lore. Look, the bottom line is this: I'm with you 1,000%. Whereas, look, is this number one? You're in the AFC, so you have to get judged differently. As we always say, there's that AFC like tax on you when you're in the AFC. I have to grade everything differently than I grade teams in the NFC. And it's like look, how about we'll start with this? Because it's like a timeline of events. The Jags shocked us, and they with the signings and re-signings they made across the O-line. I think that's the first thing that really had us scratching our head, because we went, wait a minute, you gave above average money to a lot of guys that were playing below average football, which already doesn't sound like a very good recipe for success. And you have your guy who's supposed to be the franchise guy behind center. You want to be giving him upgrades, not downgrades or stagnation, which is exactly, in my opinion, what the Jaguars did this last offseason. And with the receiving core, look, I love Brian Thomas Jr. You know, as I say, I can never knock my LSU guys, but Brian Thomas Jr. doesn't have a complete route tree. I don't know if he's ready to go be a number one in the NFL. And that's basically exactly what they're going to be asking him to do, because we know that C. Kirk is very likely going to be eating in that slot role. Gabe Davis will probably be in that Y spot that he's very comfortable with. It's safe to assume Brian Thomas will be playing X in that same role, like we were just talking about earlier, where, you know, with Keon Coleman, it's like, I don't know if BT or Keon are ready to be facing off against really dominant press man alpha corners right away, which is exactly the situation they're going to be getting thrown into. There are positives. Like, you know, I like certain additions that they made, like Eric Armstead. But on top of that, it's like, if Eric Armstead gets hurt at some point of the season, it just was a waste of money. And that's very, very potentially something that's going to happen, knowing the track record of Eric Armstead. I mean, it's like, you know, yeah, getting Josh Allen back for this year was nice. Like, that's always cool. But the D-line is still far from being all the way put together, and they made a lot of reaches, even though they were on my LSU guys. They made a lot of reaches on the D-line for as far as the capital went. You're all essentially now, if I'm not mistaken, going to be, the depth chart keeps changing. I don't even know what they're doing. Last time I checked, Darnell Savage was the slot corner. Now he's the starting safety again. I don't know what they're planning on doing as far as the corners go. There's just the simplest way we could say it, I think, that you'd agree on, is that the Jaguars have a lot more questions than answers.
I'll tell you where they don't have a question: backup quarterback. I actually did like the move for Mac Jones quite a bit, but
we'll definitely give him that one.
Yeah, banking on your I mean, I guess that's been a thing kind of in the league the last year or two, is teams are much more willing to spend on backups, because the reality is, you know, maybe once your starter goes down, your season shouldn't just automatically be over. So, good
Nick
job.
Foles, the king of the backup QB movement.
Trent didn't pour himself some Tito's that day when he made the trade, but in the draft room, he was loaded.
Oh, in the draft room, blacked out Trent.
Blacked out Trent. Tito's Trent. All right, so moving to the last team in the AFC South, we have the Tennessee Titans with a B. Now, I liked their draft. Okay, I will say this. With the Commanders as well, I think their draft class complemented their free agency class quite a bit. I still think you have an issue at a guard spot and an issue at left tackle, because something that's not on this list as well is they signed Tyler Boyd as well. So their wide receiver room is a little bit loaded right now. But you have Cushenberry, you have Skronsky, you have J.C. Latham, who could also play guard if he doesn't work out at tackle. But besides, one of the guard spots and one of the tackle spots, this offense is fully loaded to try to see what Will Levis has. And I think that is the goal of this year.
Yeah, we'll say, here's the thing. I'm going to say I've come around much more to the Titans after the draft. Because like you're saying, the draft married very well to the free agent decisions. The reality is this. I don't think that they were the team that was in the position to go spend all that money on L'Jarius Sneed. I don't think it's going to age very well, and I will stand on that. However, I understand taking the shot, right? I get it. If you think he can evolve and be an even better player off the contract, then he'll keep getting better even after he gets paid, which is something we don't see happen very often. But if you think he's going to be that guy, all power to you on making that signing, right? Or that trade and sign. And then Chidobe Awuzie too, right? The corner room has definitely been to an extent revitalized. It's definitely different than it was before. I think though that's the biggest thing is we can sit here and say realistically, how much did the team change from last year? And it's the thing is it's all contingent on Will Levis making a humongous jump. But if Will Levis doesn't make that humongous jump and anybody on this O-line goes down, yes, the receiving core looks a lot better, but again, Calvin Ridley getting overpaid, already coming off of a relatively underwhelming season. There's just like we just said about the Jags. I personally have more questions than answers about the Titans. I will say though, my favorite thing that I'm very excited about, or I don't think enough analysts really just looked at it through just like they should with a magnifying glass. They kind of looked at it way too broad. Look, we're talking about you're going to have Tavondre Sweat in the middle of a D line that happens to have not just Jeffrey Simmons and Harold Landry, but Sebastian Joseph Day, Arden Key. They're getting one-on-ones all game long. I mean, defending the Titans D-line is going to be a headache for a lot of offenses.
How do you
It's
run
just a
on
matter
it?
of it's just a matter of him being able to stay healthy and stay out of the bullshit that we've seen that he's been involved in this offseason process. But I'm a huge fan of that pick. I don't care where the consensus had him. I know that we're going to look back on that pick and everybody's going to be, oh, silly me. I overthought it. How could a guy who's 6'4", 370 not pan out in a 3-4 defense? It makes plenty of sense that, yeah, we're going to look back on that one and say that as long as he stays out of the bullshit, the Titans really hit a home run. But bottom line is, I think you agree, more questions than answers as far as the Titans offseason went.
Yeah, I think I will say this. I feel like those questions can be easily answered once we see it all put together on the field. If it melds together somehow with what they were thinking in the front office and the head coaching room, then good. I can see how this works. I can understand it now with the draft class. But there's still some things where it's okay, but if this doesn't work, obviously that's everything in the NFL, but if this doesn't work, then it looks rough because it's okay, we overspent. I don't love the overspending in the cornerback room. I don't know if that was necessary. I would have rather overspent on the offensive line to protect Levis than in the secondary.
No, absolutely, bro. Absolutely. I would agree with that 1,000%.
All right, moving into the NFC